Welcome to the first module of the Dementia Prevention Programme. In this module, I will dispel some common myths about ageing and dementia and show you how to identify the warning signs and symptoms of dementia. I will also introduce you to the different types of dementia and reveal what's actually happening inside the brain to cause the mental decline that characterises this condition. In this lesson, you're going to learn why dementia is not an inevitable part of getting older, what healthy ageing looks like, and how it differs from the mild cognitive impairment that can come before dementia, and how it also differs from dementia itself. So as you get older, you might get more forgetful. You might need a bit longer to remember things, get distracted more easily, or struggle to do some tasks as well as you used to. This may become more noticeable in midlife, during your 40s, 50s and 60s. And you might worry that they are the early signs of dementia. In fact, many people think that developing dementia is just part and parcel of getting older and stopping it is out of their control. Well, this is wrong. The likelihood of developing dementia is in your control. You can avoid dementia later in life with lifestyle habits that have been proven to protect your brain from the diseases that cause dementia. But to learn how to protect yourself from the mental decline and memory loss caused by this condition, you first need to understand the reasons why dementia is not a natural part of the aging process. So dementia doesn't suddenly appear. The seeds for dementia are sown inside your brain years, probably decades, before you'll ever experience any symptoms. Dementia is caused by diseases that damage brain cells, not by healthy aging. It affects memory, thinking, decision making and social skills severely enough to interfere with your daily life. While it might be easier to blame a debilitating disease like Alzheimer's on a single gene or the aging process, it's actually the cumulative effect of the choices that you make every day over months and years that in the end determines whether or not dementia features in your life. So this might be harder to accept, but it's also liberating because it puts control over your brain health squarely back into your hands. And the health of your brain isn't determined by your genes. It's determined by the lifestyle choices you make and the environment you live in that turns genes on or off at different times in your life. Even if you have the genes most commonly linked with Alzheimer's disease, this doesn't actually mean you're guaranteed to develop Alzheimer's. If you adopt truly healthy lifestyle practices, you can reduce the risk of ever developing the disease. And it's never too early or too late to arrest the mental decline caused by dementia. So the majority of Alzheimer's cases are actually preventable, not by traditional medicine, which despite decades of research hasn't developed a meaningful treatment for any forms of dementia, and not through some expensive equipment either or some supplement or secret formula, but actually by reducing risk factors for poor brain health like diabetes and high blood pressure, and adopting healthy habits like exercising regularly and eating a diet that nurtures the growth of brain cells and protects your brain from damage. So it's never too early or too late to make these changes to reduce your risk of dementia. You can live for 100 years without any of the signs or symptoms of this condition. And if you need convincing, you can find all the evidence that you need in the so-called blue zones in different parts of the world. So these are communities of people living in places like Sardinia off the coast of Italy, or on the Greek island Icaria, in which people live measurably longer and healthier lives without dementia. Why? Because they have a comprehensive healthy lifestyle which includes optimal nutrition, regular exercise, effective stress management, restorative sleep, a sense of purpose, and a social support network around them. And neither is a mental decline in dementia just some exaggeration of getting old. Dementia is caused by brain disease and it's not part of the normal process of healthy aging. So what does healthy aging actually look like? And how is it different from mild cognitive impairment and dementia? Well, healthy aging does bring subtle changes to your mental abilities and brain function. So the changes in your ability to think and remember as you get older are a normal part of the aging process. So some mental abilities become worse with age, while some others may actually improve. But it's important to keep in mind that there's enormous variability across individuals. So committing new information to memory and recalling names and numbers can take a little longer as we get older. and our memory of life events and accumulated knowledge of learned facts and information both decline with age. Whereas procedural memories like remembering how to ride a bike, play the piano or tie a shoelace remain largely unaffected as we get older. The ability to hold a piece of information in mind, such as a phone number, password or where the car is parked, also declines with age, and some studies suggest the slow decline starts as early as 30 years old. And certain aspects of attention can also become difficult as our brains age. We may have a harder time focusing on what our friends are saying when we're in a noisy restaurant, and splitting our focus between two tasks, let's say like holding a conversation while driving, also becomes more challenging with age. But not all of our mental abilities decline as we get older. Some actually improve. So for example, you often have better verbal reasoning and mathematical abilities in middle age than you did when you were younger. And reading ability and vocabulary also remain unchanged or even improve as we get older. So contrary to the old adage that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, there's actually growing evidence that we can and do keep learning throughout our lives. And as you'll see in Module 3, this is critical for dementia prevention. So while these sorts of subtle changes to the brain and mental function are considered a completely normal part of the aging process, dementia is not, and is not part of healthy aging. So with the brain damage that causes dementia, the mental decline is much more severe and may include other thinking abilities, such as rapid forgetting or difficulties navigating, solving common problems, expressing yourself in conversation, or even behaving outside of social norms. So what we call mild cognitive impairment is the stage between the expected changes to mental function that we see in healthy aging and the more serious mental decline of dementia. And people with mild cognitive impairment have more pronounced mental decline than would be expected for their age and education. But the symptoms are not severe enough to actually interfere significantly with their daily life, and so are not diagnosed with dementia. Mild cognitive impairment is characterised by problems with memory, language, thinking or judgment. And if you have mild cognitive impairment, you may be aware that your memory or your mental function has actually slipped. And your family and close friends also may notice a change. But these changes aren't severe enough to significantly interfere with your usual activities. So people with mild cognitive impairment are more likely to develop dementia than people who are aging healthily. Between 5 and 20% of people aged over 65 has some form of mild cognitive impairment, but only about 10 to 15% of them will actually go on to develop dementia, and that's usually Alzheimer's disease. Although mild cognitive impairment increases someone's risk of developing dementia, not everyone with it will get worse and develop dementia. Some people with mild cognitive impairment remain stable over time, and some actually improve, no longer having any problems and return to healthy aging. So the outcome will generally depend on the cause of the mild cognitive impairment and whether people have adopted a healthy lifestyle or not. In some people with mild cognitive impairment, the brain diseases that cause dementia are already established. So these diseases are not generally reversible, and so in time, symptoms will worsen and their condition will progress from mild cognitive impairment to dementia. And unfortunately, we can't yet identify with any accuracy the people with mild cognitive impairment who will go on to develop dementia. And there's currently no treatments available for mild cognitive impairment either. But if you're living with mild cognitive impairment, adopting the dementia prevention strategies that I'm going to share with you in Module 3 in your Dementia Prevention Toolbox will help to delay the onset of dementia symptoms. So what do we actually mean by dementia, and how is it different from healthy aging? Now, dementia describes the symptoms that occur when the brain is damaged by diseases, not by the aging process. So this includes degenerative brain diseases like Alzheimer's, or the diseases of blood vessels that can cause a stroke. So these diseases can cause a significant decline in a person's mental abilities. So for a diagnosis of dementia, the decline in mental abilities must have become severe enough to significantly affect and interfere with a person's daily life and activities. More about the different types of dementia and how it affects the brain in the upcoming lessons. So what are the key messages to take away from this lesson? Well, the signs and symptoms we see in dementia are not a normal part of healthy aging. They're caused by different brain diseases, the seeds of which are laid many years earlier inside the brain. And as part of healthy aging, some mental abilities like memory and attention become worse and slow down, while some others may actually improve. And this slowing and decline in mental performance are a normal consequence of the aging process, but are actually quite distinct from the brain damage that leads to dementia. So mild cognitive impairment is the stage between the expected changes to mental function that we see in healthy aging and the more serious mental decline of dementia. With mild cognitive impairment, you have more pronounced mental decline than would be expected for your age and for your education. But the symptoms aren't severe enough to interfere with your daily life. And for a diagnosis of dementia, the decline in mental and physical abilities must have become so severe that they significantly affect and interfere with daily life and activities. So in the next lesson, you're going to learn how to identify the warning signs and symptoms of dementia. So I'll look forward to seeing you there.